Balancing your wheels. Is it a good thing and should you do it? Well, GCN released a video earlier this year stating that it is a good thing. You know, they did a number of tests. They tried to get some of their other presenters to test it and see if they could feel it. And after these series of videos, I thought I would give it a go. I've been balancing all of my wheels ever since then. And my short answer is going to be, yeah, actually. Now that I've done it, I really like it. So in this video, I'm going to go over why you should balance your wheels, what the difference is that I could personally feel between a balanced and a non-balanced pair, and then finally there is how I have balanced them, because there's a few different ways that you can do it. Of course, chapters will be down below. Let's get into it. Let's go over why you'd want to balance your wheels. Firstly, it's supposed to smooth out the ride. Now I'm going to show you in just a moment what an unbalanced wheel looks like. It's very like vibrating. It kind of pulls the bike around a little bit. So it's going to really reduce kind of the vibrations going through the bike. Secondly, this is supposed to save some effort, or it's supposed to make the bike more efficient. Effectively, you can kind of feel the bike moving as a whole back and forward, and that's losing efficiency as you're rolling along. So let me show you what it kind of looks like. So when a wheel is unbalanced, you should be able to see the bike jump a little bit. So if I spin this wheel up to speed, I'll try and zoom in here, but you should be able to see the saddle jumping up and down. Then if I try and compare that to a balanced wheel, which is right here, it's practically smooth. The saddle or the whole bike isn't jumping at all. Now, when GCN went to go test this at the Silverstone test rig, where they can kind of figure out how much loss this is effectively having on the overall system of the bike, they estimated that just balancing the wheel saves about 8 watts. That's at roughly the 40k an hour mark. That's quite a lot of watts for something that you can do for very, very cheap, especially if you're really into the performance side of cycling. Now, will that be the same on every bike and every wheel? I don't know. Some might be more, some might be less. They only tested one wheel set. But for me, that is actually a rather big saving just by balancing your wheels. Now that video came out 9 months ago, and like I said, I did it practically straight away afterwards to try and figure it out. And as I said in the intro, I think I can feel the difference. The bike just seems to feel a little bit smoother. And when you're going into the corners, the bike just feels a little bit more stable in my opinion. So I think in terms of ride feel and handling, there is benefits to it. But just because there's less vibration coming through the bike, I actually think it makes the bike just that tiny bit more comfortable, meaning you could probably spend a little bit more time on that, increasing the endurance comfort of the bike. Has it made my bikes feel faster? The answer is no. It doesn't. I can't tell if it's 8 watts quicker. I think that number's too small to try and discern between faster or slower. I imagine, I'm just guessing here, that it might be less of an effect on the front wheel because it's usually a bit lighter, maybe a bit more of an effect on the rear wheel because it's normally a little bit heavier. But yeah, in terms of speed, I haven't been able to tell much difference. Now, the place where I genuinely noticed this the most isn't in the United Kingdom. Now, in the UK, roads have been famously neglected for far too long, and because the roads are so rough and potholy and gravelly, I actually couldn't feel the difference when I was in the UK at first. I was a bit like, is this actually worth it? The moment I went out to Mallorca, where they actually have smooth roads, I definitely could tell the difference. I could tell it a little bit on the flats, and I could definitely tell when I was descending. Once that speed was over 40 kilometers an hour, the bike genuinely feels smoother. And as I just said a moment ago, it's really noticeable when you're on the smooth roads. If you're on a rough road, it doesn't make that much difference. So I then did a few more trips. I went to Germany, we cycled through the Black Forest, and I also went to Italy up into the Dolomites, and we did some massive descents there. You know, coming like down the back of Passo della Stelvio, the famous Sella Ronda routes and stuff like that. Those roads are actually smooth. So yeah, coming down, descending on those, I felt like I could notice a difference. The bike was just more stable and had a nicer handling feel to me. And because you're doing big long miles on the day, like 160k kind of days, I felt like there was less vibration coming through the bike, making the bike more comfortable. Now, obviously part of that is also because they're smoother roads as well, making the bikes feel more comfortable. Okay, so maybe you're interested. How do we balance our wheels then? Well, I've got a brand new wheel set from AIM-1, which is another Chinese brand, sent to me now. And as part of the process to set them up, I'm gonna balance them. The first thing you're gonna do is actually just set your wheel up as you normally would. Here's one I prepared earlier, and we're gonna get it on the bike. Now, there are wheel balancing kits that you can buy out there online that are probably technically a neater solution, but you don't really need to do that. There's a much cheaper way. You only actually need 3 things for it. That's some Blu Tack. You're gonna see what it's for in a moment. That is some of this like lead tape. It's basically like a tape that's just kind of really heavy, and it's got like a sticky back to it. You'll see it advertised for things like golf clubs and tennis rackets and things like that. And finally, some weighing scales. Now, what you should be able to see is if I move this quite slowly, the wheel always wants to drop back down to this location. Now, usually they kind of reinforce the valve area a little bit more, and of course you have the actual valve there itself. If it goes this way, it will go back down to the valve again. So I'm going to add some weight to the opposite side in the form of the Blu Tack. Now, from doing a number of wheels, it's usually about 8 grams that is required. That will get you 90% of the way there. So I've added a few grams on there. If I just start to spin it gently, will it go back down? You can see that it's still too heavy at the bottom here. So I still need more weight up top. There's no real science to this, guys. It's just basically trying to balance a wheel. You can see that the wheel still wants to drop. I still need more weight up top here. And you'll know when you're pretty much getting there because you start to turn the wheel and the wheel will naturally stop on its own. This valve won't want to keep going. So if I just let that stop naturally, okay, you can see that this side's still maybe too heavy. It still wants to sink this way, but it's nearly there. Effectively, just keep going until it perfectly balances and stops where you want it to. So you might see that it comes up now and it's just too heavy here, so it's going to keep rolling over. Or maybe there's too much weight down here. To be totally honest with you guys, I usually get it to about 95%. It takes like an hour to get this absolutely perfect when I've tried before. And if I find it like 95% of the way there, you can still just feel a tiny bit coming through, but the bike is way smoother. You might also find that adding more Blu Tack isn't always the solution. For example, maybe you need to shift it, so if I take one from here to here, that might fix out the balancing situation more effectively than just adding more Blu Tack. Once you're happy with that, you're going to try and remember where you've placed all of that. So you can kind of see like in the logo, it basically starts at the M for me and ends as if there was an extra letter after the 1 there. You can always take a picture if you want as well to help you remember that. You can then take all of that off. Usually you're better off overcooking it than undercooking it because you can always take some off. You see I had to add a little extra to make up the difference there. One thing I personally do with this is I round off the edges to the tape, so basically there's just no sharp edges and corners in there. Time to strip down the wheel so it's just back to the rim again. One thing I will say, make sure you remember exactly where you have lined up your tyre. So for me, the R is sitting right bang in the middle of the valve there. So that's where I'm going to line it up again afterwards, because the tyre can be different weights as it goes round. So you might unbalance your wheel again if you don't put the tyre back in the right place. Now here's going to differ a little bit, whereas if you're running tubeless or if you're running tubes. Now if you're tubeless, this wheel came with some tubeless tape installed. So you're going to have to peel back some of that tape, then place on your balanced strip and then put the tape back over on top. Now if you're doing that, if you're removing any rim tape, I would probably recommend just re-taping it up overall. So take all the tape off, put your strip on and then tape it back down. And you're going to have to remember where the tape starts and ends. So you have the exact same amount of tape starting and ending in the place that it did before. So it's going to take a bit of work. If you're running a tube version, I've actually gone back to these, which are like nylon strips, which just means I can put the tape down and then stick that over the top of it, and that's going to cover up the tape for me. As I just said, I wouldn't normally have the rim tape in there, but this one came with it installed, so I'm just going to leave it underneath for now. Now you want to get that exact position lined up just as you did last time. You can peel this off the back and then make sure you're starting and finishing in the correct place. I just go around the middle of the channel there. Now this tape is like extremely malleable, so you can really squeeze it down into the center channel and it doesn't take up that much space. One thing I wouldn't recommend is if you don't quite have enough weight, is sticking another strip down on top. I found I've done this before on one other wheel that needed a little extra, and you could basically see a little bulge in the tire. I just didn't like it, so I went in, took it off, and just left the wheel at like 95% balanced. Now, cover that up with whatever you want to do. Rim tape or this nylon rim tape. And I do recommend covering it just because it smooths it out. I think it just, you know, you don't want your inner tube to fail on you whilst you're going 40 k's an hour down a hill. And then set your wheel back up as normal from there. Now, hopefully, that should be your wheel all balanced once it's set back up. If it doesn't work the first time, it is a process of try and try again, and it can get quite frustrating. Luckily, on this wheel, I've got it nailed first time. Another thing people might say, you might need like a special stand with like glass bearings, which are unbelievably sensitive to movement. To be honest, I just prefer doing it the cheap way, and this gets me like 95% of the way there, which is good enough for me. So I'm gonna have to go do the rear wheel now as well, and then I'll close out with you. So guys, there it is, balancing your wheels, something that I genuinely personally have actually really liked doing. I somewhat enjoy the process, and I actually really enjoy the effects of it afterwards, especially when I'm not in the UK, because then I think I can actually feel the difference between the two. Does it make you faster? Hypothetically, yes. I can't personally prove that, but I would say it does make the bike feel better. Guys, if you have any specific questions or things that you think I've missed, or if I haven't explained how to do it properly, feel free to put it in the comments down below. I reply to pretty much most things. You can also find me over here on Instagram, where you can message me privately as well, or just follow my daily shenanigans. Guys, I've been Jason. This has been Cycling Unboxed. I'll catch you in another video.